Let's bring in my colleague Andrew Clennell, and with him is Tony Burke.
Thanks, Kieran. Joining me is the Workplace Relations Minister Tony Burke. It seems already you're compromising on the IR bill with the business community. Can you tell us what concessions you're prepared to give them?
Yeah, there's been, over the last week, business groups meeting with me every day, some of them up to 3 times during the course of the week. And we've been working back and forth on different amendments that we might be able to include when the bill returns to the House of Representatives this week. One of the ones that we've now locked down is a change in how voting will work on multi-employer agreements. So one of the concerns, which was a reasonable concern, was the concept of you could have in a multi-employer agreement one employer where there's a heap of staff, another where it's much smaller numbers, and effectively the bigger workplace overwhelming the vote of the smaller one. So here's what we'll do. It'll be changed so that to be part of an agreement where you're getting a majority of the staff, it's employer by employer where that's counted. Similarly for industrial action, similarly to agree to an agreement. So
there has to be a majority with each individual small employer?
With each employer, that's right. The smallest businesses themselves get carved out anyway. That protection was already there. But this puts an end to the argument that you'll end up with workplaces that didn't want to be part of an agreement but somehow got roped in anyway, or didn't want to be part of industrial action. If you vote against any of the stages at that business level, then you're not part of it.
But if you've got a hamburger store with 17 people, this is the one the opposition keeps using.
Yeah.
You could end up with the same wages and conditions as Macca's, couldn't you?
Well, realistically, McDonald's already do an agreement through franchising that they already have in place. And
we'll take the example.
Yeah, but I just want to make clear, wherever an agreement's already in place, you're completely unaffected. So anywhere that there is already an enterprise agreement in place, none of this affects them at all, and I just need to make that point. In terms of where you've got businesses of various sizes, it is possible that you could end up negotiating in the same agreement, but only in situations where either the employer has chosen to or the workforce has chosen to. If you've got a situation where the workforce doesn't want to be part of it and the employer doesn't want to be part of it, you're not part of it.
But if the workforce wants to be part of it and the employer doesn't, tough luck?
Well, that's exactly the same as what can happen now on single employer agreements. Like at the moment, you've got a situation, it's pretty rare, can I say? It's pretty rare that if the employer doesn't want to, that you get a vote up of the workforce. But that's already the case on single employer agreements. You wanted to have a situation where you could do it on a single, but you couldn't do that on a multi.
All right, well, let me ask you about a couple of other concessions that have been called for. The Business Council wants multi-employer bargaining shut out until firms have 100 workers. Your bill has it at 15. They want mining shut out from multi-employer bargaining. Would you move on either of those? Yeah, well, look, to take the second one, first of all, mining overwhelmingly is a situation where you already have agreements in place, particularly on the East Coast. And on the West Coast, it's workplaces that have never been able to get a majority of the workforce vote in favour of having agreements on a single enterprise. So I think the mining example, when you get to real life as to whether it's going to happen there, I've got to say, it's not. I hear the objection, but when you look at how this actually works, why not carve it out then?
You don't. The area that I want to carve out is the construction areas where you've seen, behaviour on various construction sites where you'd say there's not the maturity there that we want to open this up to a new area. Mining doesn't have those same problems in that same way, but that's the area that I'm focused on carving out.
All right. Well, what about 100 workers instead of 15?
Yeah, can I say Senate crossbench have been raising with me this issue of 15, whether you do it as headcount, whether you do it as full-time equivalent, things like that. I expect that'll be a conversation by the time we get to the Senate. It's not something I'm proposing to move in the House of Representatives. Certainly, my starting point is I want to get wages moving for everybody. I don't want the fact that someone works for a business with a different number of employees means as a worker somehow we care about their bills less. If you're serious about cost of living, you need to get wages moving regardless of where people work. And so I'm reluctant, although I expect that conversation is likely to be one that comes up pretty strongly when we hit the Senate.
All right. Something else put to me business wants, employees would have to wait 6 to 12 months before being able to go for a multi-employer agreement, some sort of grace period.
Yeah,
considering that?
We are considering that. There's some drafts going back and forth at the moment between us and business, not on the 12-month thing, but on 6 months. And effectively, the concept here is it's often the case, even when there's good faith bargaining happening, that you don't get the next agreement up the moment the old one's expired. So to have a period where you can continue to negotiate is something where we are getting close on that. It's 6 months rather than 12. But all of this goes to a principle which has been a bit lost in some of the coverage, so I'm glad you've raised it, which is what becomes the main method? Are we going to be mainly looking at multi-employer or mainly looking at single employer? And the reality is single employer agreements will remain the main way that negotiations happen. The fact that multi-employer is
what
there
what percentage will be multi-employer in your opinion?
Well, I think we're kidding ourselves if we can invent the numbers. The challenge that we have is at the moment single employers fallen down to around 14% of the workforce are on a single employer agreement that's in date. And that's a big part of the story in wages not moving. Yeah, whether it's a single employer or a multi-employer agreement, every agreement has the same feature. And that's if you're on an agreement, you're being paid better than if you're on the award. And so, what we did first was the annual wage review. We got awards moving. You've just seen in the last 24 hours what we've done with respect to backing an increase for aged care. The next stage is for the people to get above award payments. That means agreements.